أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. We continue our discussion of as-sahw fi as-salah, making a mistake in prayer. What types of mistakes are forgiven? What types are not? We examined the arkan, the pillars of salah. If one makes a mistake in any of these arkan, such as the niyyah, the takbirah, the qiyam, the ruku', the sujood, whether a person did that out of forgetfulness, out of ignorance, or deliberate, it doesn't matter. Whenever we make a mistake in one of the pillars, by, for example, not observing that pillar. Let's say you skipped a ruku' in one of the rak'ahs, or you added a pillar. You added a rak'ah in one of the, you added a ruku' in one of the units. Instead of doing one ruku', you did two. That's adding a pillar. This invalidates the salah, and you would have to go back and repeat that salah. Now, on page 195 of our book, the author now discusses types of mistakes that are forgiven. How do we rectify the salah if we make these types of mistakes? What do we have to do? What's our obligation? What's the procedure that we must follow to save that salah and salvage that prayer? The first category are those mistakes which you don't have to do anything if you make them. You don't have to compensate by doing an extra act. And we don't even have to do sajdatay as-sahw. Sajdatay as-sahw are two sujoods that are done after the salah, right when you finish your salah, for certain mistakes. In this first category of mistakes, even sajdatay as-sahw is not required. What are they? If you forget the qira'ah, you forget to recite Surah Al-Hamd, or the surah that comes after Al-Hamd, such as Qul Huwallahu Ahad, until you do the ruku'. You did the ruku', in your ruku' or after that, you remembered, wait a minute, I skipped Surah Al-Hamd. I skipped the surah after it. So that is a mistake that you made. You forgot to observe one of the wajibat, one of the mandatory acts of salah. What do you have to do to rectify this? Nothing. You don't have to do anything. Your salah is valid. Just continue your salah. Act as if nothing happened. And after salah, sajdatay sahw is not required. So in this first category of mistakes, if someone forgets the qira'ah, their salah is not invalid. In fact, it would be haram for you to stop your salah and redo it, because you are in a valid prayer. And as we said before, salah is a sacred conversation between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's inappropriate to just abruptly end it. So if you ever forget the qira'ah and you've already done your ruku', or you remember in the second rak'ah, third rak'ah, you even remember after salah, there is nothing that you have to do. Your salah is perfectly acceptable, it's valid. No sajdatay sahw is required. So in this first category of mistakes, you don't have to do anything. One example is the qira'ah. Because we have a hadith from Al-Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salam. That's the proof that we are using. On page 195, in the second paragraph, under the number 1, the heading 1, the author shares with us this hadith. Listen to the text of the hadith. The Imam ﷺ says, فَمَنْ تَرَكَ الْقِرَاءَةَ عَمْدًا أَعَادَ الصَّلَاةِ. The one who leaves out the qira'ah, the recitation of Surah Al-Hamd or the surah after it, deliberately, yes, he has to repeat his prayer. His salah is invalid. وَمَنْ نَسِيَ الْقِرَاءَةَ. The one who forgets the qira'ah, فَقَدْ تَمَّتْ صَلَاتُهُ وَلَا شَيْءَ عَلَيْهِ. His salah is complete, it's valid, and there's nothing that he has to do. So we have a clear hadith from the Imam alayhi salam in which he says if you make a mistake like this, you don't have to do anything. You're not liable for anything. The second example for this type of mistake. لمن نسي الجهر مكان الإخفات أو الإخفات مكان الجهر. In our prayers, when we observe the recitation, Surah Al-Hamd and the surah after it, for the men, in 3 prayers we have to recite with a voice, loudly. Salat al-Fajr, Maghrib and Isha. It's mandatory. For the sisters, it's optional. If there are no men present, and when we say men, we mean unrelated men, not family members. If there are men who are not related to you, you have to recite silently. But let's say you're doing Salat al-Maghrib in your own room. It's optional for you. You would like to say it silently, or you want to recite out loud. That's optional. You choose whatever you're comfortable with. But if there are men present around you and they're not related to you, then no. You have to recite silently. But for the men, they don't have that choice. They have to recite loudly. Let's say you forgot. You, especially Salat al-Subh, people are usually dizzy. They just got up from their sleep, right? Let's say you're reciting and you're a man, you forgot. You recited Surah Al-Hamd silently. That's a mistake. You had to recite it loudly. Do you have to do anything? No. You don't have to do anything. Just continue as if nothing happened. In fact, those, even before you do the ruku', let's say before you do the ruku', you arrived at this verse. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. As soon as you finish this verse, you realized, wait a minute, I did not recite it loudly. You don't even have to start over. You don't have to go back and say, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen loudly. No, just continue loudly. So there's nothing that you have to do, and there is no sajdatay as-sahw. After your salah, you're good to go. You don't need to do anything.
Can you start over if you want to?
You can, you mean the qira'ah? Yes, you can start the qira'ah over. That's fine. You can start from the beginning. Even though some scholars don't advise it. They're like, it's better just to continue, but you have the option to start over. That's fine. But can you stop your salah and start over? No, that's haram. Many people do that, by the way. The minute they commit any of these mistakes, khalas, let me just start over. You can't. قطع الصلاة haram. By the consensus of scholars, invalidating your salah, just stopping your salah, the wajib salah, of course, is haram. So, if you find yourself in this situation, just continue. And also the opposite scenario. In those 2 prayers which we have to recite silently, Dhuhr and Asr, let's say you find yourself reciting loudly. Suddenly you remembered. While you're reading, after the ruku', after your salah, it doesn't matter. There's nothing that you have to do. Because we have a specific hadith about that.
How much silent? You have to hear yourself, or you have to hear?
Now, the author will discuss what is the criterion when it comes to reciting silently and loudly. What constitutes ikhfat and jar? Basically, ikhfat means you're not using your vocal cord. It's like whispering. It's not using your throat, right? There is no voice. That's ikhfat. So it's not movements of lips only. No, you're actually speaking. Like with a breath. You know when you speak silently, you're whispering to someone's ears. It's not just moving your lips. No, if someone were to put his ear next to your mouth, they could hear you. They could actually decipher the words. That is what is meant by ikhfat. Because if you're just moving your lips, but you're not actually reciting, that's invalid. I know some people do that. Let me just give you an example. If you were to recite Surah Al-Hamd like this, that's not a valid recitation because you're just moving your lips. A valid recitation, I'll say it a little bit louder than usual so for those of you who are sitting in the back, you can hear it. This is the proper recitation for ikhfat, for being silent. You see? There is that whisper in it. This is what we have to observe in salah. And when it comes to the jahr, when you have to be loud, it doesn't mean you have to be yelling. That's not what we mean by reciting loudly. It means you use your voice. You use your throat. You use your vocal cord. Yes. Salat al-Jama'ah, we'll talk about it in the chapter of Jama'ah. But very briefly, whenever you're praying Jama'ah, especially in Salat al-Subuh, Maghrib and Isha, when the Imam is reciting loudly, you cannot do the recitation. In fact, doing so deliberately will invalidate your Jama'ah. You're no longer in Jama'ah. So we'll talk about the rules once we get to Salat al-Jama'ah. So we have a clear hadith from the Imam alayhi salam in which he states, whenever you forget to observe this, being silent, being loud, your salah is okay and no need for sajdatay as-sahw. Some other examples as well for mistakes that don't require you to do anything. مَنْ نَسِيَ الطُّمَأْنِينَةَ حَالَ الرُّكُوعِ. When you are doing your ruku', one of the conditions, as we mentioned last year when we examined the conditions of ruku', is for you to be stable and fixed. If you are moving around while doing the ruku', that's not a valid ruku'. You have to be fixed. You have to maintain your balance. That's why we mentioned the floor that you pray on must also be stable. If you're, for example, praying on a boat that's rocking and shaking, that invalidates the salah. So one of the conditions of ruku' is for you to be stable and fixed. Let's say you accidentally moved around, or you forgot. You simply forgot and you did not observe this requirement. Your salah is perfectly valid. There's nothing that you have to do to compensate for that mistake, and no sajdatay sahw is required. So after you did your ruku', you realized, wait a minute, in my ruku' I did not observe at-tuma'nina, of being stable and fixed. I was kind of moving a little bit here and there. I did not maintain my balance. Another mistake that some people commit, especially when we're so distracted, is that you did your ruku', you were standing, you did a valid ruku'. Then, in order for you to go from your ruku' to your sujood, what do you have to do? You raise your head from the ruku', you stand upright, then you go down to the sujood. Let's say you forgot the step. You were in such a rush, so distracted. When you did your ruku', you directly then went into the sujood without raising your head from the ruku'. Suddenly you found yourself in your sujood. And you remembered, wait a minute, I did not raise my head and stand upright. I was in ruku' and then I just went down to the sujood. That is a mistake. If you did that intentionally and deliberately, your salah would have been invalid. But because you did not do that intentionally, this is a type of mistake that's forgiven. It's excused. It does not invalidate your salah. You don't need to do sajdatay sahw. There's nothing that you would have to do. Just continue with your sujood. You're fine. So this is an example that the author gives us. Another type of mistake which falls under this category is if you forget the dhikr in the ruku' or the sujood. In the ruku', what do we have to say? What's the dhikr? That's wajib. Subhana Rabbi al-Azimi wa bihamdih. Or 3 times what? Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Subhanallah. It's optional. You could choose whichever of these dhikrs. Or for more reward, you can combine them and say both of them. Let's say you forgot to do that. You did the ruku', but you forgot to say the dhikr. You did the sujood, and instead of observing the dhikr, which is Subhana Rabbi al-A'la wa bihamdih, you forgot. Or you said something else. You said Alhamdulillah, for example. You were distracted, you just said Alhamdulillah. Is your salah valid? Yes. Your salah is valid, and there's nothing that you have to do. Even sajdatay sahw is not required in this case. Another requirement of sujood, if you make a mistake in it, it does not invalidate your salah. If you remember from last year, we discussed al-masajid al-sab'a in sujood. A valid sujood requires that 7 body parts must be resting on the ground as you do your sujood. What are they? The first one is what? Forehead.
Your 2 hands.
Your 2 hands, that's 3. Your 2 knees, that's 5. Your 2 toes, right? Specifically the toes. We talked about that. A lot of people, they forget to put the big toe on the floor. It must be resting on the floor. So these are 7 body parts that must be on the ground. Let's say you forgot. You are aware of this ruling. You simply forgot. You were so distracted, you forgot to observe one of these acts. Your sujood is valid and your salah is valid. You don't have to do anything after salah. You just carry on and continue.
Okay.
Yes.
Do they have to be flat down?
Yes. Now the hands, the palm of the hands must be flat down on the floor. Some people might put only their fingers, for example, like that, right? Or they touch the ground with their fingers, you know, kind of like this. This is unacceptable. This is not the proper Islamic sujood. Your palm has to be fully embracing the ground. As for the arm, we talked about it. For the men, it's mustahab to elevate their arm, such that they're, you know, doing the sujood like this. For the sisters, it's mustahab to have their arm on the floor.
Sayyid,
Yes.
I heard something that if you have your arms down on a floor while you're praying, it's forbidden because apparently, like, even for ladies, the angels or something.
No, no, no. For the men, it's makruh, meaning it's mustahab to elevate their arm. Whereas for sisters, we discussed this last year. Specifically, we have hadiths from the Ahl al-Bayt that state for women, it is mustahab when they're doing the sujood to have their arm on the floor. So what you have been told is not accurate, yeah. It's mustahab, by the way. We're not saying this is wajib. It's just mustahab. You know, if you happen to elevate your arms, or for the men, if you happen to put your arm on the ground, that's fine. Your salah is perfectly valid, but you just did not observe this act which is recommended. Yes, brother.
For all these acts you're saying is if we knew and we forgot, but what if we didn't know? So would your prayer be invalid or that sujood be invalid?
That's a very good question. So we're talking about forgetting here. As-sahw fi salah, mainly if you forget something that you already knew. Let's say someone was not even aware of this requirement. So it's not because you forgot, it's because of ignorance. You did not know. Scholars have different fatwas over here when it comes to jahl, when it comes to not knowing. A lot of them are of the opinion that we have 2 types of ignorance. We have jahil qasir, jahil muqassir. The ignorant who's at fault, who's excused, and the one who's not. Basically, the difference between these 2 types of people, the one who's not at fault, al-qasir, is the one who didn't know any better. They really did not have the real opportunity to know about these laws. You know, they were in a family that was so secular, it never occurred to them that they had to learn these. For instance, or let's say sometimes you did your best. You went to a prayer workshop, you even read books on prayer, but these details just slipped. You did not absorb them, right? You really showed the concern to learn salah. You even asked someone to show it to you. You saw a prayer video. A lot of people, by the way, do that. They go to a prayer workshop, but then they miss details. Some crucial details, they just happen to miss them. These people, according to many scholars, are not at fault because there is no negligence. They really did their best to learn and know, but for whatever reason they missed these details. These people are excused and their salah is valid. But for those people who could have easily learned these rulings of salah, easily, with a touch of a button, with one simple question from a scholar, from a friend, from someone, by watching one simple prayer video, one simple workshop, but out of negligence, because for them salah was not important, who cares? If that's the case, not all scholars, but many maraja will say they have to repeat their prayers, because that ignorance is not excused. So it really depends, but my understanding is that today many maraja would state that your salah is still valid if you made one of these mistakes. Especially, you know, if you were not negligent with your prayers. So we have to look at the individual fatwa of the maraja to see what the marja whom you follow will state, but that's the general idea over here. So this is another example that the author gives us. Now question, a very valid question here. Why is it that you can't go back if you notice during salah that you forgot one of these requirements? Why can't you just go back and fix it? Example, let's say you did your ruku'. After the ruku', you had to raise your head, stand upright for a second, and then go down to the sujood. Let's say you didn't do that. Directly from this state of bowing, you went down to the sujood. And you remembered in your sujood. Why can't you just get up and do another ruku'?
Because you're adding.
Because if you do that, what will happen?
You've added a ruku'.
Well, see, the sequence over here, because you want to go back a little bit and fix the mistake. So it's okay for you to break like the sequence over here because you want to fix the mistake. But why can't you go back and do that? Because if you do that, you're going to add a rukun. And if you add a rukun, like add an extra ruku', add another sujood, what's going to happen to your salah? Becomes invalid. So that means you're going to break your salah if you want to fix that mistake. Here's a general ruling. This is very important. Write this down. Whenever you make a mistake that does not have to do with the rukun, because we talked about the rukun, the ruku', the sujood, the niyyah, the takbirah, the qiyam. If you make a mistake in other parts of salah that are not the rukun and the pillars, if fixing that mistake, going back to fix it, means that you will add a rukun, you should not go back and fix it. Just continue your salah. Because if you want to go back and fix it and then you want to observe the sequence, you're going to add a rukun. Let me give you another example. Let's say in your ruku' you remembered, I forgot Surah Al-Hamd. Okay, so you could say, you know what, let me just go back. You go back, Hamd, Surah, then you have to observe the sequence, so you have to do ruku'. The minute you do that ruku', it's a what? It's a second ruku'. You've invalidated your prayer. That's why if you remember you forgot Surah Al-Hamd while doing the ruku', just forget about it, continue. Sharia wants you to continue that valid salah. Yes, we'll examine in the next category of mistakes. If you remembered you did not recite Surah Al-Fatiha before you do the ruku'. So you started your salah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Qul huwa Allahu ahad. That's how you started. Allahu Akbar. You went straight into another surah. Before you did the ruku', you remembered, wait a minute, I just skipped Surah Al-Hamd. In that case, what do? Go back. Because going back and fixing that will not cause you to add a rukun in salah. That's fine. Go back, read Surah Al-Hamd, and then read the surah after it. You're going to say, but Sayyid, that means I've read that surah twice. Fine, that's okay. That does not invalidate the salah because the surah is not a pillar. As long as it's not a pillar, repeating it to fix a mistake is okay. This is the general rule that we should be mindful of. Yes?
Sayyid, like once every blue moon, when I'm like praying, for example, Salat al-Dhuhr, I'll do my second rik'ah and I'll finish it completely, and then you see how you're supposed to say Alhamdulillah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah.
Yeah, do the tashahhud and the, yes.
So sometimes I'll forget to say that and I'll get up, but before I start subhanallah, I remember that I didn't do it, so I just go back down. And
Exactly, we'll examine that.
Okay.
As long as you have not done the ruku' of the third rak'ah, you have to sit down and do the tashahhud. But if you go into the ruku', you don't go back and do the tashahhud. Because that means you're going to add another ruku'. We'll examine that in a couple of minutes. So that's the first category of mistakes. You don't have to do anything, no sajdatay sahw, you're good to go. Second category of mistakes, this is now page 196. You don't have to do sajdatay sahw for this second category of mistakes. However, you need to fix the mistake. Examples. The one we just mentioned. You forgot the qira'ah of Surah Al-Hamd, for example, but then you remembered when? Before ruku' or after ruku'? Before ruku'. There is no sajdatay sahw for you skipping Surah Al-Hamd in the beginning. However, you have to fix it. So if you started your salah and you skipped hamd and you started with, for example, Surah Qul Huwallahu Ahad, Surah Inna A'tainaka Al-Kawthar. If you remember that you skipped hamd, stop the recitation of that surah, recite Surah Al-Hamd, and then recite that surah or another surah. As long as you have not done the ruku', you have to fix this mistake. So in this second category, you fix the mistake while you're in salah. But after that, there's no other obligation. When you finish your salah, you do not have to do sajdatay as-sahw. Yes, brother.
So I've kind of noticed that if you get to the ruku', then after that, that's the cutoff point, and you can't go back and make up.
The reason why the ruku' is that cutoff point is you don't want to add another ruku'. Because remember, in salah, you have to observe the sequence too. You can't just go from qira'ah to sujood, because you're skipping that sequence. In order for you to observe the sequence, you're going to add another ruku'. So when it comes to the qira'ah, if you want to know, should I fix it or not, that cutoff point is the ruku'. And by the way, when we say the ruku', we mean like the full ruku'. If you're halfway going into ruku', you still have not reached the cutoff point. Once you're in full ruku', then that is the cutoff point. Just forget about the qira'ah, that's fine.
Whether you started the dhikr of ruku' or not, as long as you're...
Exactly, even if you have not started the dhikr, as long as you're bowing, then you have done the ruku'. The rukun has already taken place. Even if you have not said, Subhana Rabbi al-Azimi wa bihamdihi yet. Because the essence of ruku' is bowing. The dhikr is just an additional obligation. Yes?
What if you stumble on your words or your pronunciation was off?
If you, during the recitation of anything in salah, whether the dhikr, whether the qira'ah, you mispronounce a word, fix it immediately. If you realized that and noticed it. So you can always fix your qira'ah. If while you're in your ruku', you remembered that you mispronounced a word or it was off, just continue, that's fine. That's a forgiven mistake. And for those who have difficulty pronouncing some words, because Arabic is not their mother tongue, that's fine. Do your best to pronounce, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept that from you. So you don't need to cause yourself so much stress and hardship when it comes to the pronunciation of certain words. Just do your best, exactly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept that from you. Sinu Bilalin inda Allah, Sheen, the famous hadith. He could not say ashhadu, he would say ashhadu. That was his tongue. Some companions objected to the Prophet, how is he the mu'adhin who calls to the prayer when he can't even pronounce it properly? It's not even accepted from him. The Prophet, he quieted all of them with one word. He said, the scene that you hear, in Allah's eyes, it's a sheen. It's like him saying ashhadu, so don't worry about it. Yes.
Between the, when you're on your knees, Subhan Rabbi al-Azim.
Yes.
You get back up and you want to go back down
To the sujood.
Some people I hear say Sami Allah liman hamida. Can you say that?
That is mustahab.
Oh, okay.
After you raise your head from the ruku', it is recommended to say Sami Allahu liman hamida. It is not wajib.
What about when you say ashhadu, when you're bowing and you get astaghfirullah rabbi wa atubu?
That's mustahab. It's not wajib. Of course you can say it. It's extra, meaning mustahab. It's recommended.
It's not adding to the salah.
No. It's mustahab. It's not adding to the salah, because the imams would do that. But it's not mandatory. If you did not say it, your salah is valid. Another example of a mistake like this, no sajdatay sahw is required, but you have to fix it. Let's say you finished the surah. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. Now you're supposed to go to ruku'. You directly went to the sujood, but you haven't done the sajda yet. You have not placed your forehead on the ground or the urus or the prayer tablet yet. As long as you have not done the sujood yet, you have to stand up and do the ruku'. See, you have to fix the mistake. You skipped the ruku'. But as long as you have not entered the sajda fully, you have to fix it. So that's an example of this second type of mistake. Another example, you did the ruku', but you forgot to do the two sajdas. You forgot to do one sajda. So you went down to the sujood, you only did one. And then you got up to the second rak'ah or the third rak'ah, the following rak'ah. Now when you stood up to the following rak'ah, in your recitation, as long as you have not reached that cutoff point, which is the ruku', in your recitation you remembered, wait a minute, I only did one sujood. I just remembered I skipped one. Immediately sit down, do that second sujood, then get up to continue your salah. So you have to fix that mistake during your salah, but there is nothing required. No sajdatay sahw.
But that's if only you remember that you made.
If you remember, exactly.
Don't remember then.
If it's a doubt, just continue. If it's a doubt, just continue. We're talking about remembering for sure. You know for a fact you skipped a sujood. You can go and rectify it.
And if you don't remember, one is enough.
If you don't remember, then you're not sure if you skipped, just continue. As long as you...
So same thing is valid for number of rak'ahs?
The number of rak'at, we'll get to that. There's an entire chapter dedicated for that. How to deal with doubts about the number of units. We'll examine that in our upcoming classes, inshallah. So this is another example that we have. And the author tells us the hadith from the Imam alayhi salam. You can find it in that first paragraph on 196, which serves as the evidence, as the dalil for this fatwa. That if you forget one of the sujoods and then you get up in the second rak'ah, go back and bring that sujood and you don't have to do anything. This is the second type of mistakes. The third type of mistakes that we have are those mistakes which you have to fix after salah and you have to do sajdatay as-sahw. What are those types of mistakes? If you forgot to do one sajda after reaching the next cutoff point. Let me make this very clear. I'm in my first rak'ah. I did my ruku', I went down to the sujood. I only did how many? One. Not deliberately, of course. I got up to the second rak'ah. I did my hamd, my surah, I did the qunut, then I went into ruku'. When I went into the ruku', I remembered, oh, I forgot a sajda. Can I go back and fix it? Why not? What will happen if I go back and fix it? You're going to have to get up to your second rak'ah and do the ruku' again. You've added a rukun. You've invalidated your salah. In that case, just continue your salah. As soon as you finish your salah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, do the qada of the sajda. Just do one sujood, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la wa bihamdih, with which niyyah? Qada. I am doing my sajda qada because I skipped one sajda accidentally. Then you do sajdatay sahw. We'll talk about sajdatay sahw. Your salah becomes valid. Yes.
This qada sujood, is this after the end of the salah or before you end the salah?
No, after you finish completely, you say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, you exit your salah, then you do the qada. It doesn't require takbirat al-ihram. You just do one sujood, that's it.
And sajdatay sahw.
And sajdatay sahw. We'll talk about sajdatay sahw.
After finishing the salah.
Yes, so after you finish that sajda, you do sajdatay sahw. Another example of this, if you forgot the tashahhud, you know, in the second rak'ah, or even in the other rak'ahs, the third and the fourth, if you forgot to do the tashahhud in the second rak'ah, you have to sit down and say, Alhamdulillah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wahdahu la sharika lah. You forgot to do that, you got up to the third rak'ah. In the third rak'ah, you reached the cutoff point. You did the ruku'. Once you did the ruku' of the third rak'ah, you're like, wait a minute, I skipped the tashahhud. Do you go back and fix it? No. Because if you go back and fix it, what happens? You're going to have to add another ruku' to preserve the sequence. You've invalidated your salah. So the sharia says, just continue. Just continue. When you finish your salah fully, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, then do the tashahhud qada. Just do a tashahhud. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wahdahu la sharika lah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. You're done. Then do sajdatay sahw. That way, you fix the salah, you salvage it. Yes, brother.
How are you gonna differentiate if you're fully sure that you skipped the tashahhud or you shak it?
We're only talking about yaqeen over here, not shak.
How?
Meaning you know for a fact you skipped the tashahhud. You remember that you skipped. If it's a shak, if it's a doubt, forget the doubt. We have specific hadiths that if you get up to the second rak'ah and you're doing the qira'ah and you had a doubt, wait a minute, did I do the tashahhud? Forget that doubt. Ignore it, and there's nothing that you have to do. Just continue your salah, act as if nothing happened. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a mistake, meaning you know for a fact you skipped the tashahhud. Sometimes you do remember, right? Maybe in that moment you were kind of distracted, but when you got up to the second rak'ah and you went to the ruku', you're like, wait a minute, I didn't do the tashahhud. For sure I didn't. That's what we're talking about. Yes, brother.
So this case of having a doubt, would that be istisqab?
The case of the doubt, we have specific evidence from the hadith. We don't need to use any Islamic principles. In fact, istishab works against you because istishab says you did not do it. You were certain before reaching the place of tashahhud, you had not done a tashahhud. In fact, if you want to go by istishab, the law of continuity, it's telling you you didn't do it. So you have to go and fix it. But we have specific evidence from the hadith. Whenever it's a doubt, just continue. So we're talking about not a doubt. You know for a fact you skipped. Let's say, you prayed, you finished your salah. And then someone videotaped that session or that gathering and you're watching yourself praying, right? Just imagine, or a friend tells you, that's more realistic. You realize, wait a minute, I skipped a tashahhud. What's your obligation? If you're not on wudu, do the wudu. No, the law of completion applies if you have a doubt, right? If you have yaqeen that you skipped a tashahhud, you saw the footage of your own prayer, that you've skipped a tashahhud, do wudu, sit towards the qibla, do the tashahhud with which niyyah? Qada. And then do what? Sajdatay. So that's all. Because you know for a fact you skipped a tashahhud.
So you don't have to start it all over again?
No, you don't have to start all over again. Just do one tashahhud. That's all. Because that's what you skipped in prayer. So just do that which you skipped.
That's even if we have distraction after the salah?
Yes, even if you distracted yourself, even if it's a month later. After a month, you realize, I forgot a sajda from my salah. Do that sajda immediately. No problem. This is the third type of mistake. You fix it if you know that you committed it. And also what? You do sajdatay sahw. The fourth type of mistake, the last type of mistake, is that you do sajdatay sahw. However, there's nothing that you have to compensate for. There's nothing that you have to fix. All you have to do is do sajdatay sahw. What are the examples? If you accidentally speak in your salah, somebody asked you a question, they didn't know you were praying. You accidentally replied to them. Now, if it was deliberate, your salah is invalid because anytime you speak in your salah, with the exception of replying to the salam as we examined in our last class, your salah becomes invalid if it's intentional. But if it was not intentional, you accidentally said something, there's nothing that you have to do. Just continue your salah. After your salah, what do? Sajdatay sahw. Just do two sujuds of sahw and you're good to go. In fact, we have a hadith from Al-Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salam. Ibn al-Hajjaj narrates this. It's a sahih hadith. He says, سألت الصادق عليه السلام سألت أبا عبد الله عليه السلام عن الرجل يتكلم ناسيا في الصلاة يقول أقيموا صفوفكم. A person mistakenly, out of forgetting, in his salah he talks to others who are praying. He started his salah, but then he realizes there's distraction and people are not standing in lines. So he says, أقيموا صفوفكم. Organize your lines. But he said it accidentally. فقال يتم صلاته. Let him continue salah, it's fine. ثم يسجد سجدتين. All he has to do is do sajdatay sahw. That's all. So this is one example. If you accidentally speak in your salah.
Is it sajdatain as-sahw? Is it like salat al-subh?
No, we'll talk about them. They're just two sujuds. You say something briefly in them. We'll talk about them shortly. No. They're not salat al-subh rak'atain. It's just two sujuds. So that's one example. Another example that we have of this type of mistake is if you do the taslim not at the end of your salah, in another place, mistakenly. When does that usually happen? In the second rak'ah. Let's say you're doing Salatul Dhuhr. It's 4 units. So in your second rak'ah, you do the tashahhud only. Then you have to get up. You forgot. You did the tashahhud, and then you said, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As soon as you said that, like, wait a minute, this is 2 rak'ahs. Just continue. Continue your salah. There's nothing that you have to do. Finish your salah. After your salah, do what? Sajdatay sahw. That's all. These are the types of mistakes that we have in our salah. Finally, we end with how we do sajdatay sahw. We're talking about sajdatay sahw, right? How do you do them? Basically, sajdatay sahw is done after you finish your salah. When you say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, then don't get up, turn from the qibla, or break your wudu. Immediately after you finish your salah, you make the niyyah to do sajdatay as-sahw qurbatan ila Allah ta'ala. You don't have to say this. Just keep that in mind that you're doing the sajdatay as-sahw as an act of ibadah. It's mustahab to do takbir for sajdatay as-sahw. You're sitting down. Remember, you're not standing up. You said Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. In the state of sitting, you say Allahu Akbar. It's mustahab, not wajib. You don't have to do that. Then you go into sujood. Now, in your sujood, there are 2 phrases to choose from. You can choose which one you want to recite. The first one is Bismillahi wa billah, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. You raise your head from that sujood. You go into a second sujood and you say the same thing. That's one phrase you can state. Another more common phrase is Bismillahi wa billah, Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So after Bismillahi wa billah, either you say the salawat or you say Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You say that in each of the 2 sujoods. Yes, brother.
If you say Bismillah, alhamdulillah wa khair al-asma al-husna,
that's in the tashahhud mustahab. We're not talking about the tashahhud now. When you're sitting after the sujood, it's mustahab to say Bismillahi wa billah wa khairul asma'illah. We're not talking about that. We're talking about sajdatay sahw that are observed after salah if you've made a mistake. That's different. What you refer to is the tashahhud. This one is sajdatay sahw.
What is it? Bismillah wa billah, what else?
Bismillahi wa billah, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad is the first statement that you can say, or Bismillahi wa billah, Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You do this twice, 2 sajdas. As soon as you're done with the second sajda, you're done. You have done sajdatay sahw. No need for a salah like salatul subh. No, you just do sajdatay sahw. So this is how we observe sajdatay sahw. Question, if you forgot to do sajdatay sahw, see, sajdatay sahw is to help you with something that you forgot. If you forget it itself, right? Do it whenever you remember it. Let's say an hour later, you're like, wait a minute, I forgot. I spoke accidentally in salah. I was supposed to do what after salah? Sajdatay sahw. Now you remember it, do them now. Just do the wudu, because you have to be on wudu, and then do them. So they are to be done immediately after salah, unless you forgot, it was not deliberate, that's fine. الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآله الطاهرين.